Welcome back to Jack of All Trades. Today we're going to be building a new PC. I'm going to have my daughter help me, and it's the AMD, just give you a sample, AMD Ryzen 9 7950X. This is what it looks like. So I bought the whole computer, and I'm going to be piecing it together today. We have the GeForce RTX 3070 card. That's going to be going into the build. Tuff Gaming Edition GeForce from Asus, and it's 8 GB. It's a 3070 Ti. Samsung 980 Pro, and what this does is this gives you 7,000 write speeds. DDR5 from Cosair, 32 GB, and it's rated at 5200 megahertz. EVGA 1000 G5, and it's rated at 1000 watt power supply. This will power future builds. It's 80 plus gold edition. Be Quiet Dark Rock Pro 4. This is for AM4 processors. This will fit the case that I got. I'll show you the case in a second. This is supposed to be a quiet cooler. I decided to go with air cooling instead of water cooling. There's an x670 Aorus Elite AX motherboard. This is what it looks like, and we're going to be using this for the Ryzen 9. This is a socket AM5. We got an MSI GK30 gaming combo, and this is going to be our RGB keyboard with mouse. It's wired. And this is the case. It's a Be Quiet Pure Base 500 FX case. So you got to be careful with the case you choose with your build, because your air cooler has to be able to fit, and all these components will fit together perfectly. The Be Quiet Dark Rock Pro 4 does have the mounting bracket to mount without the back plate onto the mounting screws of the AM5 motherboard. The RAM is compatible, the DDR5, so hopefully this will be a really good build when I get it together. So I'm going to bring my daughter in, and she's going to help me put this thing together for you guys. And right here I made a custom installation of Windows 11 Home. I used a special software to get rid of all the bloatware on it and create my own ISO. So I'm going to be using this to install. And that's pretty much it. So we're going to set up the table, move the camera, and we're going to show you how to build this thing. Okay guys, let's do a quick unboxing. The motherboard, it comes in a anti-static bag. It comes with this little metal logo. A very small manual. Now you can go online and download the proper manual. I included the diagrams later in this video. It comes with one SATA cable. This is the Wi-Fi antenna. A bunch of screws. This is where this is your PCI Express. You got 3 of them. .2. This is where all your connectors connect. Your SATA, motherboard, USB-C, fan headers for CPU, power cables. That's what the jacks look like on the side. You got your standard USB 2, USB 3, USB-C. I think that's 2.1 gigabit Ethernet audio jacks, built-in HDMI, and those are the Wi-Fi connectors. The AM processors have built-in graphics, just so you know. That's why there's an HDMI on the motherboard. To install the CPU, we're just going to undo the clip here. Just carefully lift this out. You want to be careful because the pins are on the motherboard, they're not on the CPU. And you're going to want to remove this protector. Just pops out. Now if you ever have a motherboard issue, you're going to have to retain this piece because they will not accept the motherboard back unless you have the cover. So keep it in a safe place. The processor, 7950X, you're going to want to install the arrow, matching the arrow on the motherboard. Look at the chart I just put up on the screen. You can see what I mean by the arrow. You just drop it in like that. Very simple. Then you're going to push down on the lever, lock it down. That's it. This is the RAM. We got 2 sticks, 16 gig a piece. We're going to want to be using the A2, B2 slots. On the motherboard it's marked A2, B2 for dual channel. So that's going to be the second slot from the CPU and then the last slot. And if you're running 4-channel, you're going to fill all 4 modules. I even highlighted the diagram with the yellow marker there, so you guys don't make a mistake.
Push down.
You're going to want to install your components on the box like I'm doing. It's easier to install the RAM, the cooler and everything. My daughter's scared. She's scared she's going to break the motherboard by pressing down too hard. So, very simple install. You just want to rock the RAM into place.
Sure it's in the groove.
It is in the groove.
In the groove on the other side. Push down. Rock it. Like this.
When you got the RAM seated, the clips will lock. This is where the M.2 drive is installed. We're going to install our operating system on this drive, Windows 11. Simple screw. Now this motherboard has a twist lock to hold the M.2 in, and this is the heatsink material, or the thermal pad. And you just, it's very simple, you just place it in, and then you're going to push it down and then turn the little plastic lock tip. Some of the M.2 motherboards will take a screw. This one's basically a quick install twist and lock. Then we're going to put the heatsink cover on. When you put the screws in, make sure you go backwards a little and then forward so that they thread in, so you don't strip the threads. To the right of that is there's another heatsink, a big black one, and that's where the other M.2 drives go. Included with the air cooler, I highlighted the chart up on the screen there. You're going to need the certain screws, the bridge plate, the studs for the AM4. You're going to want to take this fan out of the Rock Pro 4 air cooler. Take off the cover there. Now this comes with thermal paste. You can put a bead of a pea-sized bead into the CPU, or you can use spread it. Now later in the video I used a spreader. So we're going to need to take these brackets off. Now remember, this motherboard does not have a backplate that can be removed, so it's fixed to the motherboard. So you need to get a specific air cooler for the Ryzen 9. that's mounted from the top or it won't work. And this Rock Pro 4 Be Quiet cooler comes with the correct hardware. I put the diagram in the bottom left so you guys can see what I'm going to be doing. You need to put the spacers in first and the two brackets. There's one, there's two. And these are the little posts. And these are the brackets that are going to hold the Rock Pro 4 or Dark, whatever they call it. Dark Rock Pro 4 air cooler to the CPU. Now when you put the screws in, you're going to go backwards and then forward. And what I didn't show in this video is when you put the screws in, you're going to tighten them, but leave them a little loose until you can line up the cooler with the bridge bracket. Because you're going to need to move these little posts ever so slightly to line up the holes. And once you got it all lined up, you're going to just finger tight, work your way around till they're all equally tight. You don't have to over crank these. You don't want to put any pressure on the motherboard. Now you can go with a pea size in the middle and put the cooler on top and you'll be okay. But because I've never dealt with a CPU heat sink like this type of chip, it has a lot of edges on it. And I want to be able to cover the entire metal surface and not have too much thermal paste that'll ooze out when I tighten down the cooler. So I put a thin layer of thermal paste on the Ryzen 7950X, and I'm working it around the ends to the very edges so that all the heat transfer gets taken away from the CPU and goes into the air cooler. Take your time. This is just a bread tab I'm using. You don't want to put the thermal paste on too thick either, just a very thin layer. You're going to need to remove the two caps so you can get the screwdriver in to access the screws that go over the bridge plate. I'll show you right now in the video what I mean by the screws. The Rock Pro 4 comes with this magnetic screwdriver, and you're going to put the screw in and then access the bridge plate through those holes. And just so you know, the weight of the actual air cooler is enough without any screws to transfer the 95 degrees heat to the CPU. So you don't need to crank down on these screws. Just till it's snug. It's not going to make a difference if they're over tightened or under tightened. As long as they're just equally snug, you're fine. Then you're going to secure your air cooler that way. Now I'm lining up the bridge plate with the holes, as you can see in the diagram. This is why you want to make sure that you line up the holes first with the bridge plate, then tighten down the 4 screws that are on the posts, and then now you can put the screw down in and it'll thread in perfectly. And once you get both screws in, now I'm just doing this because I have a hard time seeing, make sure that those screws are lined up and threaded in. So I'm just double checking this with the light on my phone. Because I don't want to strip these. So I go backwards and then I go forward. Make sure that the screws are set into the bracket. And then I just go back and forth, side to side, till the tension is the same on both sides. But I don't want to bottom out these screws because it'll put too much pressure on the motherboard and it may crack the motherboard. And you don't want to do that because that'll cost you money. Just want to secure this just snug, but not over tighten it. I always use the finger tight rule. And you're going to put the caps back on once you're done. This is what it looks like. Now you're wondering about that blue band that I'm wearing around my wrist. That's an anti-static band. That's just to ground me so that way I do not put any type of positive voltage or a shock into the motherboard. I suggest you get one of these little bands. Now we're going to put the fan back in. We're going to make sure the logo matches the front because the airflow flows through the logo and out the back. We're going to tuck the wire underneath and then slide the fan back in through the cooler. Now these fans don't light up when you turn on the power. You can buy the model up of Be Quiet and then both fans will have LEDs on them. But the case has LEDs on them. It has 3 front fans and 1 rear fan for exhaust. So there you go. And these lock into where the screw holes would go to hold the fan. And they just simply you press them up and they lock against the fins of the radiator. And they hold the fan in, just like that. It's very simple. You're going to notice I used a splitter connector too at the bottom. Both fan cables go into the cable provided, and then they go into this port here with the arrow. I do not use the opt CPU. I use the actual CPU fan header. You can see it plugged in right there. Don't forget to put that splitter cable that came in the box to connect the 2 fans and then into the one, and then feed it into the CPU fan header. Now I'm going to want to tuck this away, make it look nice and neat. That looks good. Okay, I'm going to be using a Pure Base Be Quiet case. Beautiful case. Got good airflow. Careful when you take the glass off. So now we're going to want to put the motherboard into the case. But before we do that, we need to pull out the little accessory box that came with the case. I want you to pay attention to the next clip because this is very important. The size of the motherboard screws that connect to the posts. Comes with some cable ties and some screws. Now you're going to make sure you use the correct screws. But before we do that, we need to take the fan out, or you won't be able to get the motherboard in. Okay, the case already comes with the posts installed, as you can see in the right diagram. The center post does not have a screw hole. It's just one that lines up the motherboard. Now the one with the arrow, that is the motherboard screws that you're going to use. The other one's for the hard drives, the old hard drives, and then the SSD drives. But the middle one is the correct screw that you're going to use to connect the motherboard to the posts. And it's the same idea. Put the screws in backwards and then thread them. And when you're tightening them, tighten them all equal, finger tight. You don't need to crank on these and crack your motherboard. Just take your time and work your way around. Now this is the third computer I built, but I don't think I've ever, I think I did a video many years ago. So this is, hopefully this video helps out anybody that's going to be building a new computer. Taking you step by step. Later in this video I'll take you through the BIOS. Once you got the motherboard installed, reinstall the fan. This bracket is connected to the power supply. Now I'm running a G5 EVGA power supply, 1000 watt, 80 plus gold. We're going to be mounted with the fan facing down because there's an air filter in this case, and we want the air to blow in from the bottom and out the back. So these are all modular. We have the diagram on the right shows the amount of cables that you can run for your graphics card, your CPU, your SATA drives. Inside the kit is included as a tester. This is to bypass the on and off switch that the motherboard would give you. So you can test the power supply before you install it in the case. So I just connected the motherboard cable. This just makes a jumper wire. I believe it's from the green wire to the black wire. Don't get me wrong, but I think that's what this is. I used to be able to do this manually, but they came with this little jumper wire to test the power supply. Gonna plug it into the wall, and we're gonna just flick the switch and see if the power comes on. You do not want to install your power supply and find out it doesn't work and have to rewire it later. And once we got that tested, we're going to install this cover. I kind of like the idea of having a separate cover to slide the power supply in. Makes it easier for installation later. So it's kind of a nice little feature. Normally you attach the power supply to the case with 4 screws. Okay, we got our SSDs. I believe there's 4 spots for SSDs. 2 on the side here, 1 on the front, 2 on the back where the motherboard plate is, and then there's 2 more hidden underneath where it's highlighted in the diagram. You can put full-size drives or SSDs in there too. So you have a total of 6 drives you can put in this computer. And a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 M.2s. And the good news about the M.2s with this CPU is they each get their own lane with the Ryzen 9. They're not shared lanes. So you're getting full speed out of all your drives. This is where you would access the cage to install your old type hard drive. And these just basically screw in to hold the cage. Okay, so once you get your connector, your SATA cable, you can put this little clip on. It comes off just pinch it. It's a be quiet little clip there. We're going to feed our wires through. This is the SATA cable, and highlighted in the right diagram are the SATA ports. There's 4 of them on this motherboard, and I love the way this case hides the wires. It's got a rail. I'll show you in a second once I connect this. See the rail? It hides all the wires. So it's a pretty cool design. Very clean. You're going to plug in your 2 power cables for the CPU. You're going to want to run 1 cable to the power supply. Each cable, you do not want to split them. And then you want to run your motherboard cable to your motherboard, plug it in. As you can see in the diagram. It's hard to get the camera in here, so these are where you're going to connect your USB, your on-off switch, your USB-C, and your audio. Now you're going to take off this part, this fan header, and put it on this part right here. This allows you to connect to fan 1 of the motherboard to control the LED functions if you want to bypass the fan controller on the case. So that cable back there I just showed you in the corner I was pointing to, that's your audio connector. This case comes with an audio connector, a USB-C connector, a on-off switch connector, and a D-LED connector. These are the switches to turn on the case and off the case, and the power LED for the power switch. And I highlighted the yellow so you can see how they're installed. Very simple to do. You're going to plug these into the pins. Like I said, it's hard to get a camera in here. And like I said, this is a warning here, just telling you that the case comes with its own power cable that you're going to connect directly to the power supply, as you can see in the diagram. It gets its power off the fan controller, not off the motherboard. That's the audio connector I was talking about, where you're going to connect the audio connector from the case. That's the USB-C. That goes to the USB on the top of the case. So this here is the graphics card, which is I think it was a robbery for the cost of this card, but anyway. I think it's a 370 Ti. So this should do my daughter well for many years. Okay, so not much in the box. You're going to make sure you take the plastic cover off the graphics card. I set the switch to quiet mode because I want to hear the case. And I also did a tweak to the CPU fans, and this made this case completely silent. So once you take all the wraps off, you're going to install it in this slot right here. You press down, it clicks it, and it clicks the tab and locks it. This case is pretty big enough to hold a full-size graphics card. It's got good clearance. You're going to want to run 2 cables, each one to the power supply. Do not split these cables to the graphics card. Then you're going to screw down the end, lock it into the case. Later we're going to be putting a graphics card anti-sag device on the end. And there you go. And then you're going to plug all your cables in that you need. That's what I love about this bracket, because now you can just slide it in and then tighten the screws with your hands. Now this case can allow the power supply to be mounted upward too, because it has fan holes. So you're going to just do some cable management back here. Now I did this, I took this off, it pops off to show you the fans. And it comes with a filter. You can use the bigger size fans as well if you want to upgrade. Then you put the cover back on. And this is all LED. And this just snaps back down into place. Later I'll show you all the diagrams of all the configurations that this case can do for radiators and fans. So there you go. I just cleaned up the cables. That looks really beautiful. Now this is the device I bought from Amazon. It's just a little piece of metal with a little screw, and it's magnetic. You're just going to undo the lock and screw and adjust the height, and just place it on the end of the graphics card. It'll stay in place because it's magnetic. And then you're going to screw the little end until it touches the card, and then lock down the lock and screw. That's it. That'll keep the card from sagging over the years. That's what it looks like. Face up. It's very quiet. I think it looks beautiful. It's a very expensive computer though. And this is the fan controller button. Now, you could change to different color modes. I suggest you leave the LED control to the case and not do it on the motherboard. But you can override it by pressing this button, hold it for 3 seconds, and then you can let the software take over and control your LED stuff. But the case is more than able to control all the LEDs in the case. I just left it as the case controlling everything. I'll just cycle through all the colors here. My daughter ended up keeping it on rainbow. That was her favorite color. That's the button right there. 3 seconds to override. There is no reset switch on this case. There's only a power button. And this is what I promised earlier. If you're looking at putting radiators in, this is the configurations. And if you want to upgrade the fans, these are the locations and the sizes. The CPU fan header, system fan headers, if you want to do it manually through the motherboard. This is a breakdown of the entire case and its components. These are the addressable LED LEDs for motherboard LED control, and the other two LED LEDs. This is your USB-C that connects to the top of the case, so you can plug in a USB stick. These are USB 2.0, so if you want to run an external card out the back, you would use these ports. Or if you have an older case And same thing here, USB 2. Depends on the case you have. You're going to be using these ports. So in the overhead diagram, without anything installed. And it comes with 4 SATA 6 gig connectors. The motherboard and CPU power connectors. M.2. There's 4. Each one has its own dedicated lane to the CPU. These are the powers. Now some cases come with HD lights, reset switch, speaker to go beep when you first turn the computer on. You would refer to that chart. And this is the audio connector that connects to the audio jacks on the top of the case. Okay, you're going to want to remove the power connector from all your hard drives. Remove all the M.2 drives except the one that you want your Windows installed on, because you want your boot manager and your Windows OS to end up on the same drive. Okay, now that we're in Windows, I'm on the other computer now. You can if you want, you can use the Windows utility, or you can use this utility to create your bootable USB key. I included the link to my download site. This will create a USB bootable drive for your ISO image. To get the Windows ISO, you're going to go to the Microsoft Downloader website. Make sure you get your ISO here. Don't get it from some other site. And then you're going to select the Create Windows 10 Installation Media. They also provide the USB tool to create a bootable USB. You can get it there too. Or you can use this tool, which I use. When you load the tool up, you're going to select your flash drive, USB stick, which will be listed here. You're going to select your ISO image that you downloaded from Windows. Now this is a custom image, which is stripped down, but the one you're going to get is going to have everything included. You're going to select it, and keep this at GPT UEFI, keep it at NTFS, and then press start. That'll create your USB bootable installation media. And here's the warning again: remove all the power cables except for the M.2 that you're going to install Windows on. If you do not do this, your boot record and your Windows will end up on separate drives. In the BIOS, you're going to press delete when you boot up, and you're going to select the boot tab, and you're going to want to check the boot option and change it to the USB key, which is, in my case, UEFI generic partition 2. And then you're going to save and exit, and this will install Windows off the USB key. And once you're done, you're going to shut the computer off, connect all your hard drives, power, and your M.2 drives, and then continue. Now we're on the Ryzen 7950. We're going to try to get a tool called Cinebench. Get it from the Google Play Store. And we're going to be using this to run a stress test, temperature test on the CPU. Going to install that, and then you're going to install this program, CPUID HW Monitor. This is going to monitor the voltages, the megahertz. You do not need Ryzen Master, but I'm going to use it anyway. It comes with my motherboard. We're just going to use this to monitor the temperature. Now there's nothing done in the BIOS. This is manufacturer default. So these are all the tests I ran. I'm just going to rewind this real quick, go take you through this. We're going to run it at 10 minutes, and we're going to start. And this is just going to continually loop, so we can monitor the megahertz, the temperature. I'm not too worried about the benchmark right now. I'm more worried about just getting the data from the temperature, the power to the package. And you're going to see that as we scroll down, you can see the package temperature, CPU temperature. Keep going down. These are all your core clocks for each CPU. And it tells you the voltage of the RAM and everything else. But we're not concerned about that. Okay, so let's do a benchmark. Turn this to off and press start. And we're going to get our benchmark number. And once we're done this, we're going to go back into the BIOS and change some things. Now right now the fans are running loud. They're at full tilt, trying to cool down the CPU because the CPU's operating temperature is 95 degrees Celsius. And AMD says this is the normal temperature. But the PC is loud. I want a quiet, silent PC. So there's the score. It's a pretty damn good score for default. All the temperatures went back down. Now, people say you need to drop the voltages on the CPUs. But when you're not using the CPUs, they're running under like limited voltage. It's only when you're using them at full tilt is when you're using the full power. So you need to understand that. So I would even touch the voltages on this CPU at all. So let's write down the numbers that we got. Down below is the default numbers for this CPU. And I want you to recognize the standard temperature is 95 degrees and the base clock is 4.5 gigahertz. I want you to remember that because we're going to do a tweak now. And we're going to end up at higher than 4.5, but yet really good score and absolutely quiet PC at 80 degrees Celsius. So I want you to pay attention to the defaults and then the results at the end of this video. So let's take a look at the wattage. And what's the peak wattage? 204.93. That's the power that came out of the CPU. So we're going to see what we can get down to at full operation with the BIOS tweak. You're going to save this and then restart and go back into the BIOS by holding the delete key on restart. Okay, now we're in the BIOS. We need to set our RAM. This is your standard XM1 RAM. We do not need Expo RAM. Just so you know, you do not need to buy AM Expo RAM. But let's set the overclocking first. Accept. And then we're going to go to Precision Boost Overdrive. We're going to let the motherboard take care of the voltages and everything else so we do not damage our CPU. We're going to want to go to Platform Thermal Throttle, Control, set to Manual, and set it to 80. That's 80 degrees Celsius. And then we're going to need to set our memory before we save all the settings. You're going to select Extreme Memory Profile. And then set it to XMP1. And that puts in the manufacturer settings for the RAM. And we're going to save and exit and go back into Windows 11. Okay, these are some more tests I ran. I just wrote down the average cores, listings, And then we're going to run one more test. And I was looking at the wattage. So we went down from 204 down to 160 watts with the tweak. We went down to 80 degrees Celsius. And to get the actual megahertz, the score, we're going to want to shut down everything. And run one final test. And then we're going to run a single thread, a single CPU test. And see where we stand on just one core running. Because I do not want all these programs to affect my score. Now remember, I'm recording on an Aorus recorder. So there's no recording software running in the background here. This is directly from, nothing's running except this program. You can see that the score that Cinebench puts out is 36533. And the original score was 36974. You're losing absolutely no performance. And you're ending up with a processor that's running at 80 degrees. It's quiet. The fans, you can't even hear them. And you're not losing anything. Why I'd want to put my processor in eco mode is beyond me. I would not want to lose performance of 10, 12% or 5% or 8%. So I just sped this up. This is single core performance. This takes a long time. It's amazing how long it takes to do this test with one CPU running. But the cores were running around 4.8 on all cores, and it went up to 5.1, 5.2 on boost with my tweak. So it's still running above the manufacturer minimum, and you're losing the heat on the CPU. So there's the score right there for the single thread or single CPU, and it's still on the top. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Sorry it took so long to make. Please subscribe, leave a comment. You guys have a good day.